what's really hood. We're back off of a long hiatus again, Webs. I mean, it's like season 3, season 4, or something crazy like that.
Something like that.
Something like that. Rebrand. Hoodlum culture is no longer hoodlum culture. The Legion of Pedagogical Supervillains rebrand, flipping it on you all. Yeah, we're gonna be back, hopefully with some interesting stuff. And given the current educational landscape, Webs, plenty to talk about, plenty to iterate about, many things to converse about, and try to look at things in a way that perhaps people aren't looking at. That's how we rebranding it Legion of Pedagogical Supervillains, because we pride ourselves on looking at things the wrong way, if you want to say it that way. You know, the way that they're not supposed to be used, perhaps exploiting things in different ways. So that's where we're going, Webs. That's where we're going. That's where we're going. Anything to say to the people, Webs?
Hello. It's
Hello.
good to be back.
Indeed, 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 indeed. Uh, as always, it's Mike and Webb's, the Intelligent Hoodlums. We back at it. But we're going to very, very much hit the Canvas learning management system is the thing that is like running the Clark County School District, and that is our local school district. And so we're going to very much be kind of offering some tidbits from some ways that people could like how are we gonna put this, Webs, to
Survive.
survival is always a good thing, but also to lessen the learning curve for how to use this tool in your classroom immediately. As I've said countless times before, and I will continue to say, you don't need to learn how to use all the parts of the thing. You don't need to do that at all. And I always talk about like your car, right? Your car has a manual that comes with it. I don't know anyone in my personal life who has spent days reading that manual, learning their car inside and out. There are probably people who do that. Webbs, did you read your car manual when you purchased your car?
No, I didn't. And I have a funny story about that. I had my car for like a month, maybe or so. And all of a sudden, the lift gate wouldn't open. And I was like, oh my gosh, this sucks. I haven't even had this car this long. Suddenly, the lift gate's not opening. It must be broken. So I take it into the car repair shop. I'm like, yep, my lift gate won't work. I don't know what's going on. This is ridiculous. Like, I just got this car. I'm gonna be so upset if it's broken. Yeah, so there's a button right about knee height in the driver's cockpit area that controls whether you can open the tailgate or not. And I had bumped it and turned that feature off. So had I read through everything, maybe I would have known that. But instead, I opted to just take it in and have someone else look at it and immediately tell me that I'm just a silly goose. Luckily,
or
it wasn't
or
broken. But
or perhaps liftgate happens, right? Or not liftgate happens. I now go to the manual as a reference because I'm looking for a very particular piece of information, which saves me the one of the things that always baffles me is like, oh, here's all the training modules. You're like, all right, cool. Well, I'll do the training modules, but I don't have anything to actually apply the training to. So I'm just going to forget this stuff anyway. So why did I do all the training modules? Go ahead, Webs.
situated learning, or I go to an expert. I go to someone who knows it inside and out, and it's their whole job to know it inside and out, so they can immediately tell me what the problem is instead of me trying to waste my time becoming an expert.
Big facts, big facts, big facts, which is kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit today. But Canvas can, the really sexy thing about Canvas is that it is blank. You can make it do a lot of things that you can't do in Edmodo or Google Classroom or what are the other ones?
So what you're saying is it's a blank canvas.
But bum. Yes, it is.
Edmodo, Google Classroom,
Schoology.
those are really the big ones.
Yeah.
Schoology, yeah.
So those kind of come pre-packaged. They kind of preordained. They tell you exactly the path in a lot of ways. There's not a lot of customization there. It's pretty much this is the thing. Put your stuff here. Canvas does have some page types and things like that, but again, you can make the pages, you can make the experience what you would like it to be, rather than in Google Classroom, or your class is pretty much going to look like everybody else's class, right? In any of those other deals, which that sameness is a strength though at times, right? If I'm stepping into Google Classroom, I know exactly how your class functions because mine's going to function the same way. However, because we're kind of avant-garde and we're provocative here, the same thing is kind of bland and boring. Would you agree, Webbs?
I think you can apply the important things that need to be the same and still offer some character and have some reflection of who you are as an individual teacher, but relying on some of the existing design patterns in order to make it easier for students to navigate.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what was Ask a Software Developer is now Letter to the Editor. We're going comic book style here. We're gonna tap into this Marvel energy here, Webbs, just a little bit. And Webbs, as a remote worker, as somebody who does not leave their house to do their job, one of the constant refrains of this current age, the whole push for in person, in person, in person, in person, part of that was the socialization. The kids aren't talking to one another. They need to be together and all this other stuff. As someone who is a 100% remote worker, excuse me, and someone who still has to collaborate with other people, still has to converse with other people, how is it that you stay sane given that this is not supposed to be possible?
I mean, some would argue I don't. Um it's not that hard. I mean, there are tons of people out there who play video games and build relationships and friendships with people over video chat that, like, some people who have never, like, so one of my best friends at work, I didn't even see him for probably the first 6 months that we worked together. He was just a voice in a computer, like Knight Rider or something. Um and we use the channels that are available to us. Like, a lot of our communication happens over text. So like we have a Slack, we have lots of Slack channels. We have a Slack instance for the big group of us that do work together. Um we have Slack channels. So a lot of it happens in Slack. Like, we have the channels related to like different customers and stuff like that, but we also have random channels. We have hobby channels. So like, I'm in the gardening channel, I'm in the pets channel, I'm also in the random channel, and so that kind of gives us the opportunity to share what our different like hobbies and passions are. It builds affective association, which I just posted a blog about. We can talk about that later. um it gives us an opportunity to just share who we are and be regular people, and then we connect over those things. I have one-on-ones with people a lot, so like we'll schedule like times to like sit and chat just over Zoom. Zoom is our preferred video chat like option, but any video chat option will work. But it gives us an opportunity to like just kind of like we normally would if we were in person in a normal building. We just have conversations, and I mean that's really what it's about. Like, I don't need to touch you. I mean, if you're touching your coworkers, I'm concerned. Like,
Perhaps.
the prime the primary ways that we connect are over audio, visual, like, and we still have access to those. So
I mean, and
uh
not to be insensitive to people who feel that there are people who need to have proximity in order to feel people's auras and stuff like that. Totally not being insensitive to those individuals. But I have read, and I'm sure you have over social media the last up teen months about how kids are not being socialized. They don't have the ability to converse with one another. They're not discussing stuff. We have to have in person because this is such a vital thing to happen, and TikTok would say otherwise, Snapchat would say otherwise, WhatsApp would say otherwise, Twitter would say otherwise. Like, it's a very interesting thing. So, in your opinion, and can you wax a little philosophical about this, and then let you get it seems like you have something to say. Um, does which offers more equity, using digital tools in order to allow for discussion and conversation, or in-person learning in the kind of traditional way that we do discussions.
So that's actually what I was going to say. I just had an aha moment where I was thinking about how there are a lot of tools that we rely on now that wouldn't be possible in person. So like subtitling is a huge one. So being sensitive to our deaf and hard of hearing, like friends and folks, you can't subtitle real life really, or it's challenging. I mean, there are a few apps out there that allow for subtitling, but not in the way that it's front and center with virtual conversations like this. Also, I would say one of the really helpful things about being in meetings, I was thinking about this a couple weeks ago, being in meetings that are over, say, Zoom or Google or whatever, you have the person's name right there, and you can also include pronouns. I had a meeting with someone a while back where after the meeting was over, they said, "Oh, I really appreciate that you included your pronouns so that it's a lot easier to tell, and it makes it easier, I hope, for folks who change their pronouns, because you can just change them like in Zoom instead of having to make some big announcement or tell everybody. Like, you just change them on your profile, and okay, that's now same applies to Slack now has a spot for pronouns as well. So I think it is a lot when it comes to equity. I think virtual space offers tools that you don't have in person. However, I think also a lot of that push for being in person really centers around the typical like experience and doesn't include folks who would benefit from the additional supports around audiovisual things, being sensitive to proximity, people with disabilities. I was just watching a video of a lady who works in tech, and she switched fields to tech. I don't know what her previous field was, but part of the reason she switched to tech was the ability to work remotely because she has a chronic disease and has days where she cannot get out of bed, but she can still work and function and contribute and continue to make sure she can pay her bills, because which speaks poorly to our society, but that's a whole other topic. um she can still do that because tech allows her to work from anywhere. She doesn't have to expend the energy of getting up, getting ready, driving, or Ubering or taking the public transit to her workplace, being in a workplace all day. There are a lot of things about even just the getting ready, traveling, and going into a workplace that are really stressful for a lot of people. And I would say the same would probably apply to school and kids. Also, distractions. I feel like the distractions are a lot more limited working from home because if folks want to have my attention, I have to also give them my attention. They can't just like co opt my space and time and like stand by my desk and continue to talk to me. I have to set up, or they have to set up a meeting. I have to show up to said meeting. Like, it's more of an opt-in situation when it comes to interruptions than what a normal office is like.
Oh, I agree, and I think furthermore, right, the challenge for the next iteration of education is going to be you are not going to have enough licensed teachers in order to run these buildings, right? So you don't have enough education graduates, you don't have enough people in ARL. It's not something that pops off, right? So it's going to be, how do you get the licensed professional to be able to speak to not just the people that standing that happen to be in their immediate proximity, but also to the class down the hallway that might not have a licensed professional in there that might need that support. How do you ensure? And this has kind of been my this is kind of my thing from now on. We should the teaching to the student in the classroom is not the that's not the clarion call right now. It is, how do you make sure that whether I'm in the room or not, I have access to the learning and understanding that was pervaded, because chronic absenteeism was not a problem that started during COVID. It was an issue before that, right? Kids in poverty, kids who had chronic illnesses, kids who were getting bullied. These all existed before March 13th, 2019. So these are issues that existed. If you and I have a conversation in person, how is that archived? It's not
It's
archived at
not.
all, right?
Mm-mm.
And you can remember certain pieces. I can misremember certain pieces, and now we have a situation in which our data no longer lines up. We were both there at the same time, but I remember it this way. You remember it this other way. No, Webb, you said this way. And we have no way to check the authenticity and accuracy of what that discussion was and how that happened. That has been true since the beginning of time in terms of in-person conversations. This is why you can't put hearsay evidence at a trial, right? It can't be a situation in which I'm there. Yeah, I overheard so and so say so and so. Well, okay. How many studies have they done where like different witnesses of the same crime see it different ways? And we have to have a way to archive discussions, conversations, and learning so that they can be revisited and revisited accurately, whether I was in the room at the time or not, in my opinion. What say you, Webbs?
Yeah, I think if it's a conversation that's happening like out in the open with everybody, like it's a lot more beneficial and equitable if everyone can go back and look at it and reference it. Also from the perspective of like multiple exposures to information, I can't it's a lot harder to do that in person than it is with a virtual component, at least a virtual component. Like if there are kids who are in person and that's their preference or it's more beneficial to them, great, but I think to say that having a virtual component is in no way beneficial is just foolish to me because there are always going to be kids. When I was doing my student teaching, I think I mentioned this, I've told the story before. There was a kid who got some kind of crazy infection and was out for like 8 weeks. And that this was not an option for him, but I bet his parents would have really loved if it were because um then he wouldn't have had to worry about like homework packets being sent home. It blows my mind that I still see people who are like, we don't have enough printer ink or toner cartridges for copies. Like you get receipts when you do stuff online. You don't have to make copies. Why are we still doing this?
Well,
Aside, the only exception I could see is for kids who need the motor skills to learn how to do writing. I get that. Like that makes sense. If you don't have access to something like an iPad where you can actually do it on a device, like then I get needing to make copies. But as far as like at least second grade and up, I don't see why you need to make copies anymore.
to me, it's a yes and, right? I am not
Hmm.
against having in person conversations, but you cannot have every kid in your classroom share. Like when we do our little partner activity and I'm talking to Bob and or you and I talk or whatever, great. I am directly benefiting from a conversation with you, but the person in the back there, we don't have time for all 35 students to go and share their information. The only equitable solution to that thing is okay, you had your conversation with your partner, now add it to our Padlet, our Jamboard, our discussion in campus, or whatever, so everyone can see all these different opinions and these ideas and whatever. Because to me, what we want these collisions of ideas and culture and whatnot. That's what propels us forward. Not I talked to Bob for 2 minutes and we don't have any other time to converse, and there's no way I can personally connect to all the other 35 people in the classroom. It's just not possible, right? Also,
Hmm.
again, the inequitable creation, inequitable distribution of time in sections in classrooms, right? If I am in middle school and high school, that teacher has 6, 7 other classes. I won't interact with the students on the material that we're being taught in the other sections. Well, we can stop that. We can have a situation where section 7 and section 1 are colliding, collaborating, where all the sections see all the information, and suddenly some kid in 7th period, I get an idea from this person. We don't have to segment people arbitrarily anymore either. And
We
that's
call
the
that siloing.
siloing people. So that's the technical term of it. So I
Yeah,
mean,
that's actually something that, like, in my day job, we work with companies a lot to get them to break down their silos because it's really helpful to the customer experience to be able to look at how information is flowing through your architecture from beginning to end. And you're not just like chucking it over the wall to the next group of people to deal with it because a lot of context gets lost and mistakes get made when you're not collaborating and contributing all to the same moving the same objective forward together instead of like the whole like instead of it being like a relay race, it's like we're all running it together, I guess is a better way to put it.
well, I mean that was the using discussions, which we're going to kind of get to later on in the program, in for the first 2.5 months before my retirement, um, was the best thing that I did as a teacher in years. In that it created the most dynamic collaboration possible, given that kids across periods could collaborate with one another, give people ideas. There wasn't like this. I say this over and over again, and generally secondary teachers agree with me. I've done 2 stints in middle school. First hour class is always the experimental class, right? It's the I've got an idea. We're gonna see if it works. Second hour, again, your idea gets better because you've done it one time. You know exactly how that your ability to do your transitions is going to be better. You know what the pitfalls of the first hour are. Third, fourth hour, you're just on it because you know exactly what you're doing. Boom, 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 boom. You probably got an extra couple minutes to spare because you made it more efficient. But as you get closer to the end of the day, the more tired you get because first of all, you're doing the same activity over and over and over again. It's boring to you because you're the only participant who has done it multiple times. And just that natural fatigue pops in. It's after lunch, so you got some of that like that nap time wanting to come out with you, etc. The technology allows you to be the third and fourth period teacher at the beginning rather than having a situation in which you have to have um, that some of the kids, in my experience, and I'm speaking for myself here, were shortchanged. Those first hour kids and the second hour kids, Kelly, we were starting at 6:45, fam. Now, had I used not used the Canvas in order to make sure everything was popped off, the kids who were taking naps, the kids that went to sleep at 3 in the morning, those kids would have lost out on those experiences because they would have been asleep through those in-person conversations and never paid attention to what's going on, and never had the ability to go back and say, okay, these are the things that we did during the class period. All right, great. Now that I'm up at 1 in the morning, I can just revisit those conversations, see what everybody else is doing, and now I'm prepared for the next day.
Yeah, even outside of Slack, like one of the big resources tends to be Stack Overflow, which is basically a big discussion board where people post their problems and then other people respond to them. So there are lots of different ways that discussions come up in my day-to-day like day job.
And that's just the way of the current world, right? It's not something that's in a lot of the conversations that are being had in the education space amongst, I'll call them moonwalkers because that's why I think people are looking backwards, trying to go forwards. It's a very weird scenario. Is that perhaps they're not aware of the current realities of the workplace? You're saying that on a daily basis, this is the way you communicate. This is not something that's alien, right?
Oh, I would say 80 to 90% of my communication is written in some kind of chat form. It's either most of it is over Slack. Some of it is over email, but I would say the majority of it happens over Slack or some other chat, or it's in a tool like Jira or Trello where you're leaving comments for someone or threading a discussion. I would say threading a discussion is a current skill that's required. Like if you go into a workplace and you don't know how to thread a discussion, that's going to irritate your coworkers very quickly.
Well, I mean, as a newly ordained remote worker, that's pretty much how I stay sane. Is the Slack, and then we've got Nifty, we've got, hey, I just need a quick phone call. I've got standing Zoom meetings with people. Um, and again, this is the reality of the scenario, not a situation in which I have to. You know what? Webbs. I got a question. Let me drive over to your house and let's have a in-person conversation about a question you can answer.
I mean, when was the last time you and I saw each other in person?
2019,
Yeah.
almost 3 years ago.
So, and I don't feel like I'm missing something deep because we haven't shared the same space. Like, I
Me too.
talk to you regularly on the phone. We have regular Zooms and board meetings.
I mean, yeah, I
There are a
mean,
lot of my coworkers that I have never met in person, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything by not seeing them in person. Like, Would it be great to every once in a while be in the same place, get coffee, whatever? Sure. But like there are so many opportunities now to still build that rapport and still build that relationship without having to physically be in the same space.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, like, given that what you just said, the other thing that we've kind of been grasping with is like, I'm back in the classroom. I don't need to use digital tools anymore, right? And that's also been like, I am free of the realities of the modern world. I don't have to do these things anymore. Let's go back to the way it was, right? And
Virtual
so,
learning is terrible.
which,
Evidence shows it is not.
but it's not a binary situation, right? And I think that is the like very interesting thing about this conversation that we have. Like, die hard, it must all be in person and all on the line, and you're like, no, there's a happy medium that exists, because previous to this, people were using digital tools in classrooms to have kids do all kinds of stuff like that, right? This is not a the internet existed before March 2019. And people were using the internet to do work before March 2019. I think that's the in our haste to reestablish this the in-person learning experience, we have forgotten that people were using iPads and computers and whatnot in classrooms before March 2019. The fact now that it should no longer be a choice whether you use them or not. It's what the pandemic should have spoken very loudly to us. But the fact that that's not a deal, that's neither here nor there. It's very interesting, however, when you see rants online about how like now it's paper and pencil and I'm packets and stuff, and you're like, dude, if you so well, this is just if you had if
Tangent.
you went and had a you went and surveyed 100 teachers, what percentage of those 100 teachers do you think actually grade the packets that they hand to kids?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I'm going to say 30% maybe.
I think you're highballing it there, bro.
Okay.
I think for the most part those things go right in the trash. Or the
I don't know. I'm surprised by how many teachers will go through those things and spend all of their weekend like writing down comments and giving feedback.
I I've known teachers to do that, and I've known teachers that get a packet, they look at them things, they know it's a bunch of busy work in the first place, and they toss it in the trash.
It's one of these, you get it, you flip through the pages to see that they did it, give them a check mark, and then give it back to them.
That's absolutely what it is. And you got a 5, and everybody got 5s because you went and spent your free time doing something that I didn't care about in the first place, which is what it is. But every time people start talking about packets and stuff like that, I'm like, all right, what are we actually assessing with packets, fam? Nothing. We're assessing whether you will acquiesce to my command. That's essentially what we're saying. Are you a good little drone? But I will go. That is neither here nor there. That's not what our show is about. Anyway, discussions, and you kind of mentioned some of the stuff that I'm going to go over, and whatnot. Let's take a look. And we're going to deal with discussions, fam, because really and truly, this is like one of the easier ways to and I had a friend of mine kind of challenge this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You don't really need to learn, if you're brand new to Canvas, you don't really need to learn how to build modules. Building modules will take some time and, some diving into, just human-centered design or some philosophical idea about how to pedagogically create concepts and constructs and pages so that students are best able to do them. Discussions, though, you've been having discussions, whether it's Kagan strategies or shoulder partners, face partners, whatever. You've been doing that since day one, right? That's not something that's totally having a conversation with another human. It generally happens with us, whether we're in a classroom or not. We're pros at that. Yes, webs, maybe.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So
Like, I would say too, like discussions are like the most foundational part of human exchange, right? Like you say something, I respond to you. So it seems like it makes sense as a place to start. Also, spoilers, there's a tons of things you can add to a discussion to kind of be a what do you call that? Like a jumping off point,
but a jumping off
provocation.
point, but also like literally, and I'm going to demonstrate that today. You literally do not have to build any modules or anything. Now, if you were somebody who's like, I'm going to do my tier one instruction in the classic sense, face to face with students, okay. In theory, you could do that and still use discussions in order to make sure that every kid had the information that was necessary, in my opinion. But let's go and see if we can do some demonstration here. Now, this is not the Clark County. If you're a Clark County School District teacher, this is not a Clark County School District instance. This is just a free instructor. And one of the things when I went back in the classroom in August, right? So I was totally remote, doing virtual learning until August of 2021, and I knew that going to middle school, that bell work that bell work component was very, very, very integral to when I was doing hall duty. I wanted the kids to have an activity to have to start to set up and stuff until I got in the classroom. And I am assuming whether you teach middle school, high school, the upper grades, the 3 through 5 in elementary, when the kids come in the classroom, you've got some kind of bell ringer and stuff for them, and they should be old enough students that you can demonstrate to them this is the protocol that we're going to constantly follow. It was also great that when I was discussing this with parents, I was like, your students always, the first place they go is the discussions. Your modules, and this is my philosophy, my philosophy, my philosophy. Now, other people will differ, Webb, so let me bring it back here. My philosophy. And I think this makes it a lot easier for you as the designer of your coursework if you think this way. A bilateral faction. In my opinion, the modules are for self guided learning. I want a student to be able to go at whatever pace is possible and comfortable for that student in the modules. That's the on demand part. Every kid shouldn't be in the same module, in my opinion. There are kids who go very slow through the modules. There are kids who go very fast in the modules. There are kids going to go in the middle. There are going to be brand new kids to your class that never start. I want that space to stay as pristine as possible and to be that safe haven so that a student is never behind because you're right where you're supposed to be. If I have to do any, I notice in the modules because there's plenty of data you're going to get for the modules that kids go through. If I notice in the modules that there's a particular skill that most students have difficulty with, if there's a particular skill I need to teach, and I need to make sure that everyone is on the same page, that's where I move to discussions. Hey, here's the discussion. That's not going to interrupt your flow in the module because the discussion is a separate thing, or I can make them a separate thing. And then you can go back to your modules and back to your work. And I'm not rushing people. That's one of my big pet peeves with how people are constructing Canvas is it's this rush job that everyone has to be on Monday. Everyone has to be on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. I don't think that's entirely healthy when that's not how this tool needs to be set up. What say you, Webbs?
Yeah, that's an interesting. I had never thought about that. But it also kind of differentiates from a design perspective between here's stuff that I work on by myself, here's stuff that we work on together. And it's really easy also to pick out the things that we work on together because they end up being conversations. But they're tracked and recorded in such a way that if I need that support again later, I can still go back and reference them. Or if I'm not in class, I can still go back and reference them. Because I think I shared a video with you where there was a person at a daycare and they were talking about when emergency learning was happening and how they had a lot of kids that were doing like virtual emergency learning, and then a lot of parents just kept them at the daycare center, even when some kids went back to face for consistency's sake. And the big problem was that when they would see what the kids were like viewing on their screen, it was a lot of like the teacher had set a computer facing the whiteboard, and the quality of the camera wasn't good enough to be able to read anything on the whiteboard. And the teacher was across the room, so the microphone wasn't picking up what the teacher was saying. So the kids were just sitting there frustrated and completely unincluded in the actual lesson. And the teacher probably had no idea. They thought, what? The camera's facing the board. And I think this is where we come back to, and I know we've talked about this before. This is where we come back to having some amount of technology related literacy, of knowing like, hey, this camera's, or even just checking your setup and like, what does it look like from a student perspective to be a distant learning student and see this view through the camera, to hear what the audio sounds like for on the other end of things. I think having that empathy and checking out what that customer experience is like is really essential. Even if you don't have like, even if you can't say how many frames per second your camera is, or what kind of audio type quality microphone you're using, you can just check it, and then at least you know that all your students, because like if we were strictly limiting this to in person, and you decided to put a fence in front of your door, and you have a student with a wheelchair, that student can no longer get access to your classroom. Why does the same not apply to students who are virtual? Like, why is it acceptable to punish the students who are choosing not to come into class when that's been provided as a viable option?
Absolutely, absolutely, I definitely agree. And also, this is one of the reasons what our next show is going to talk about streaming. And when we talk about streaming, it is not. It's not like what we're doing right now. That's not what I mean by you have to be in front of the camera, whatever. It is scheduling content to occur at a given time so that if I'm a student, whether I'm in person or I'm at home in Acapulco or whatever, I know at 8:15 my math class starts, and it's not a Google Meet or Zoom. It is going to be my teacher in the clearest quality possible. Because if we run it through different programs, it is not going to be the rather poor camera that comes with your Google Chromebook, right? We'll have an opportunity to have that, and you also have tools that are built in for conversation and discussion, and you can hack the discussions, like we're going to look in just a second, to become a streaming platform for you. So suddenly, not only do you get the benefits of a better video experience, but you're also going to have all of the discussion that goes around or go along with that video that you're utilizing. You're going to have that um, archived, so that again, a student who we always talk about students who are chronically absent. What about students who transfer into your course, right? I have never ever met you before, and now like Miss So and So, what do I do? And you're like, just start what everybody else is doing. Well, I needed some previous experiences in order to do what everybody else is doing. Where are those previous experiences? If we don't archive them digitally, then suddenly that student is not going to have that same experience as are the students that happen to be in your class the entire time.
Also, the discussion platform provides an opportunity to build that affective association. So, affective association is basically just bringing emotions and humor and paralanguage into your classroom. I wrote a blog post about it. It's on our website. I'll share it at the end of the broadcast. But um, that affective association is going to really build engagement in your classroom. It's going to build a community in your classroom, and you can do that in a lot of ways through discussions.
Big facts, big facts. So let's take a look. All right, so this is discussions. If you're in the Clark County School District, in the secondary sections, you're going to see discussions like very prominent on the left hand side once you get into a course. If you are in the elementary sections where your stuff is divided by subjects, this is not going to appear when you go into Canvas initially. You'll have a button about I would say about right here that'll say manage subject. And when you hit that manage subject, then you will see what's here on the left hand side of my screen. So you click discussions, and I'm just going to start over. I'm going to leave that.
Do they have to hide or unhide discussions, or does elementary have it showing automatically?
They should. That's a good question. I believe that once you add the first discussion, it should unhide it itself. Once you publish it,
Okay.
once the publish is there, you should be fine. Just students are going to have to go hear the discussions, and don't quote me on that because I do not have access right now to a elementary um, in Clark County School District instance, but discussions is there. I believe that it will show up if you're someone who's familiar with the elementary. Your elementary is going to be a big block like this, and it'll have little tabs with modules and schedule, et cetera, et cetera. I believe discussion will show up as a tab there on your screen as well. But if it doesn't, no worries, we'll figure it out. That's one of the things I'll kind of deal with. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete this second one. All right, so say Webs, we're having a situation in which we're just, since social emotional learning was so important to people, and they thought that like everyone was bugging out, and one of the great ways to use discussions is just check-ins, right, with students. And it was one of the things that was really successful in my classroom, and it was like not just basic stuff, but like really, really interesting things. And the first thing we're going to deal with is naming conventions. You want your discussions to be easily found, and one of the best ways to do that is either use the date. It's the 16th today, or create
Yes.
modules or ideas that you can go and have a situation in which those ideas are grouped together. These are always going to be, here's my empathy interview for the day, here's my check-in for the day, whatever. Refer to those things as those. So January 16th, what's your groove? I want you to give me a song or a singer who will give you, or who would like, whose music fits your mood today. And so you would have kids who, Juice WRLD. Why Juice WRLD? I'm feeling a little emo today, Mr. Lane, a little moody, got issues. Bet, got you. LL Cool J, even though none of them even knew who LL Cool J was. Whatever their favorite singer was, great. Drop a GIF, image, or screenshot of your favorite of a singer or song that captures your mood today. All right, love this for multiple reasons. All right, because if you notice down here at the bottom, it says post two. I always kept mine all sections generally so that every kid, no matter what period you were in, could see all the other grades, other periods work. Because you start to see commonalities. You would have kids that say, oh, I love BTS too. Or, yeah, Travis Scott, yeah, I love Travis Scott as well. And then you would have these conversations amongst periods. What's your favorite Travis Scott song? Did you see so-and-so? This happened. Do you have the link to this video or whatever? And you have these really cool organic conversations happening. So you can determine what sections, if you cross-list your courses, what sections see it. Webb's mentioned threaded replies. And Webb's, can tell us what a threaded reply actually is?
Yeah, I can. Also, before we jump onto that, I just wanted to mention, if we're really genuinely worried about mental health and social emotional health, then opening this up to like multiple sections of your class allows students to connect with other kids that they may not otherwise have come across. And let's be real, like you may be in a classroom, I'm sure we've all experienced this, where you just don't connect with anybody in that particular class. But if you had been put in a different section, then maybe you would find someone to connect to. And so this allows them a much wider opportunity to be able to connect with other kids that might have more in common with, than limiting them to just the siloed section of the class that they randomly got put into. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Big fact.
But threading. So threading is basically someone posts something. Like let's say you post, I really like Aesop Rock. And then I respond to that thing. I respond specifically to your comment. And that starts a threaded reply. Instead of just like also adding to the general chat and saying, hey, I really like Aesop Rock too, I would reply specifically to your comment, and then it would start a new thread. So like in Slack, what happens is it opens a separate pane where discussion about that particular comment and in responses to that particular comment can happen. And the benefit to it is it kind of keeps things a bit more organized, instead of it just being one long stream of people talking and replying about things. So it's really frustrating to have a channel where You know, you say I like Aesop Rock, and somebody else says I like, I don't know, Travis Tritt or something, and then yeah, I really like him too. Which one? Who are you replying to? Well, I don't know because we don't have threaded replies. And maybe the Travis Tritt crew doesn't want to have overlapping conversation with the Aesop Rock crew or something. So it allows to kind of keep conversation um more specific and organized.
Because fundamentally, you could use discussions to create a Slack-like experience, right? You could say,
Yes, absolutely.
this is going to be our whatever, or a Reddit and
Channel.
subreddit situation or whatever. Here's our music discussion. Great. Bada bing, cool. I set it up. I make sure that the threaded replies are allowed. So when kids go into different, on different tangents, everybody's good. Most of the time the user must post before seeing replies. I liked that situation because it gave there was a situation in which, or it made me feel like you weren't stealing from the conversation, right? I want you to contribute something and then you can take things from other people. But what I didn't want is like the weird voyeurs who'd like, oh yeah, then suddenly, oh yeah, you've taken all this information. These the bandwagoneers, if you want, if you want to say, that would be like looking at curious about the conversation but not contributing. And it didn't have to be something long. It didn't have to be something dynamic. But generally, the stuff we were talking about, everyone had a music. Most people listen to music. Most people have a song they listen to. Most people have music on their phones, et cetera, et cetera. I have met a couple interesting people who say they don't listen to music. I don't trust people that don't listen to music. I'm just keeping it 100 with you. But yeah,
It's also the dinner, like ordering dinner at a restaurant situation. So like if you're ordering dinner at a restaurant and you have an idea of what you want, and then someone else before you orders that same thing, the odds are likely that you're going to change your order and get something different. And so I feel like by having them respond first, you're capturing their authentic response instead of having, especially when you're talking about like middle school and high school kids, instead of having them craft their response to match whatever their peers said.
absolutely, because that's the easiest way to just finish the. Hey, I'm just gonna say Travis Scott. What's your favorite Travis Scott song? I don't know. You're like, okay, all right, fam. Enabling the podcast feed. So if you want to have a situation where you are going to receive this information, kind of like a podcast, kind of like a rolling a scenario, this is kind of a really cool thing to have, and including the students' replies, and that you're going to get this in kind of like a really, really cool way. Grading. Now, I graded certain discussions, and by grading, I don't mean I gave it an A, B, C, or D. I hit the graded, and all I said was, I want to see if you did it or didn't do it. I use this for attendance. So I knew Bob was here or whatever. When we had the beginning of the school year, there was this there was a different place in IC for virtual learners because those kids were quarantined or not and whatever. And this made sure that I could reconcile when I went to IC to say the kid had participated today. I'm looking, oh yeah, they completed their discussion. It didn't matter when they completed it, it's just it was done. Again, so that was there. Also allowing liking. This is a very interesting thing for me in a lot of ways. Because on one hand, you're like, yeah, it's cool to have kids like other people's posts. But on the other hand, it might hurt other people's self-esteem and feelings. So I generally do not allow liking. If you like something, you just respond and, hey, that's really dope. I like so-and-so too. Bet. You had to take the time to actually articulate that you had some feelings that are similar to somebody else, and that's cool. And there's no collateral damage in that conversation, in my opinion. But I didn't want to have like somebody had 295 likes and then this other kid has zero, and like now, like why would I contribute to the discussion continue? What do you think, Webs?
Also, I think it encourages them to articulate their thoughts a little more deeply. I think it's really easy to just, hey, hit the like button. Yeah, that's cool. And that's it, and not think much more about it. But if they don't have that access to just hit like, then they have to, and they want to contribute something to the conversation, they have to formulate some sort of a response and really think deeply about, like, one, do I want to put the energy in to reply? And two, like, if I do reply, what is it exactly that I want to say? So I would imagine it encourages further discussion, more discussion, if they don't have the option to just like something and walk away.
Big facts. You can also have group discussions, right? So you can set up groups in your Canvas course. Really cool. You can have Canvas set them up themselves. So I'm going to allow people to sign up. You can't require groups to be in the same section, but what fun is that? If the kids aren't in the same section, it's more fun. So then you got like kids in section 5 with kids in section 1 or whatever. All right, let them sign up the way that they want. So group name, Bob. All right, how many groups do you want? I want 5 groups of 4 people. Say there are 20 people in the class. Great. All right. I can have it automatically assign somebody to be the leader. So there's again, this is great for collaborative projects and planning and stuff. I want, automatically Canvas is going to determine it. First person in the group or randomly assigned, or you as the teacher can say, hey, Bob, you are the leader in that group. But I like the random assignment because then like some kid that joins it, you're like, all right, I have no idea who the group, like, who's the group member. Let me look. Oh man, it's Phil. All right, great. Phil is somebody who usually isn't looked at as a leader. Now perhaps is going to take this on and say, all right, cool, we're going to go and manage these things. This is what we need to, these are the things that we need to get accomplished by the end of the class period. What say you, Webbs?
Also, I would imagine you'd have a standoff situation if they know it's always the first person to join who gets assigned group leader, or you'd have people who want to be group leaders, so they jump into the group as fast as possible, and then it makes it so that other kids don't have opportunities to be the leader.
Big facts. All right, so you can create assignment groups and stuff. I mean, so you can use discussions for portfolios. You can use it for what do you call the things where you walk around the classroom and look at stuff?
Um, Gallery walks.
Gallery walks. All that wonderful. You can do everything virtually here, right inside here. So you can create different assignment groups. The peer reviews. So my last course was a graphic design course. And what I wanted kids to be able to do is look at other people's work and give, hey, this was what was required. Did Bob do X, Y, and Z? Yes, no, whatever. You can assign peer reviews. Usually I just automatically assign them, but you can manually assign if you want certain people to be people and say, hey, every kid has to have 2 people review their work or comment. That way you force comments as well. So, hey, this is a piece that I just made where I had to make an album cover that would be something that showed up during the civil rights era. Great. I throw my thing on the deal. I want 2 kids to have to review that before we go on to the next hustle. All right. Assigning everyone, you can assign to certain kids, certain sections, et cetera, et cetera. And you can make it do a certain day. Generally, I didn't do that. I just had them open and available from certain dates as well. All right. So that's like the nitty gritty of how to like run these things. Now, in terms of like the sexy stuff that Webbs was talking about, what was that term you use?
Affective association.
Affective association. So we're going to go for the affective association here. Because in person, I am generally limited to you having to discern any, physical responses that you have to interpret those as communication, any verbal communication I have. And if you and I don't speak the same language, that also creates a barrier to us being able to be understood accurately. Online, we have tools that would allow us. Go ahead, Webbs.
Interestingly enough, one of the research studies that I cite in that blog post talks about how it specifically was looking at multicultural virtual classes using discussion boards. And it was helpful for students who came from different cultures to have the sort of common ground of the virtual space in order to better navigate one another's culture.
Big facts. And we had, I'm going to go to one of the homies that I taught. He would go because everything was in discussion. If he couldn't get to the immersive reader, he would just highlight it, put it in Google Translate, get the gist of what he was saying. All right, cool. I understand what you're talking about. Now let me go and respond. He would respond in Spanish, and you have the Spanish language kids, or kids who understood Spanish say, okay, yeah, I absolutely understand that. And then we have this very cool scenario in which that kid was seen. I think that's the other thing with discussions online. You can be seen. And sometimes being seen is a good thing. Sometimes, as we know with Twitter fingers, being seen is a bad thing. But if we set up scenarios and protocols that allow students to be seen positively, I think generally you're not going to have very much many problems with kids being forthcoming with their interactions. But effective associations. So one of the great, really cool things to deal with is making this a theater. All right, so this virtual theater space where you post your YouTube video, you post your walkthrough, your tutorial, whatever here, and then utilize the discussion space for kids to do what they need to do. So let's find something really quickly. So I'm gonna go to YouTube and I'm gonna type Martin Luther King. We're live.
We are. It's true.
All right, great. So haven't watched any of those. So let's say homeschool pop. That looks interesting. So let's click that. So I'm gonna pause that. So I'm gonna copy this there. All right. So one of the cool things as a Clark County School District teacher, and we're gonna lean into this more next for the next show, is that the Canvas does some very interesting things with YouTube that are ballerific. Bless you. Now,
Thank you.
you as a Clark County School District teacher have, or if you are a Clark County School District or paying customer for Canvas, you have the Canvas Studio option. You'll see that in the free version that's not there. So Canvas Studio will be like, it look like a little TV with a play button in the middle of it. You can just paste the link inside there. In terms of Canvas here, we can upload or record stuff immediately. Your students can also record themselves from their cameras on their Chromebooks if that's what they have. All right, so they don't have to be able to type either. They can simply say, I think that Mrs. Weber, this is what happens, and that video will go inside of the discussion as well. Anything that you use in the course is there, and any user media, things that you've built into the course is there as well. But in order to get this YouTube video in there, all I'm going to do is the following. Oh, which I didn't think about. Where's my bad? So I'm going to hit the share button there. I'm going to hit that embed. I'm going to copy that embed. I can use the cloud, which will be on your instance as well, or I can use the raw HTML editor, either one. I'm going to use the cloud here and submit. Bada bing, that YouTube video goes there. I add my instructions about, hey, today I want you to watch this video, whatever, add your discussion questions afterwards. I'm going to publish this very quickly, Webs, so we can kind of see what the end thing looks like. Hit the save button. I really hate that so much. Bada bang. And you'll see underneath the reply deal. All right. Underneath the reply, you will notice that looks exactly like your teacher interface. The exact same thing. The exact same thing. Kids can type, they can do whatever. But let's say I want you to respond to this in a GIF. All right. Jiffy, probably like the world's most famous GIF place. Do you have another place that rivals Jiffy?
Mm-mm.
So Jiffy's probably it. So say that,
Yeah.
Say it made you feel proud. You're probably gonna see proud family stuff here. So Jessica's Props and Rec is there. I'm gonna go there. Great. And you will see that embed option there in your Jiffy. I'm gonna copy that. Webs, what is the benefit of making things responsive?
That means that if a student is using a smaller screen or a mobile screen, it's going to adjust its size instead of staying super huge and taking up their entire screen, and maybe they can't see the whole thing.
So I'm going to make it responsive and then copy the code and then go back here. And you will notice that as a student, I also have the cloud there. Click, paste, submit, and then post my reply. And I really hate that so much. And you'll see that I'm proud of you pops up. Great, fine, dandy. Can the kids add like a trailer around that, why you chose that gift or whatever? Awesome. But gives them another way to converse. How else might we go and deal with the affective, I like that term, affective situation. So I'm going to
affective association.
So with that plus sign again, this is a podcast feed, so I'm going to see all these things as an instructor. I'm going to say, yo, one of the things I was pretty bummed about with the Chromebooks is the lack of ability to create multimedia effectively as a native product. And so 1, 2, 3 apps, Totally free, doesn't cost a dime. You can rock and roll with it. You got a bunch of video tools so they can record themselves there. They can edit video, etc. Kapwing is another one that I would definitely suggest. But the audio tools are the ones that I'm going to play around with. You can change pitch. I had a lot of kids change the pitch of their voice and stuff, so they chipmunk it and stuff like that, or make their voice deeper and whatnot. Super interesting. But I'm gonna go to voice recorder and click that, and you'll notice there's no login. There's nothing. It's just a big record button. Yeah, I felt that Martin Luther King was a inspiration to myself and a lot of people that I know. There's my audio. Hit the save button. This will download directly to your Chromebook, so you don't have to have any extra technology or anything. Let's say MLK Day deal. Save. Wonderful. Now go back here. How do I get that into my instance? You're going to see that there is that picture that's there. Wonderful. Upload media. Click. Let's put it there. Yep. And open. There's my file. Submit. There's certain kids who might not be comfortable typing, might be better able to express themselves just orally. Great. Post reply. You're also going to have kids who don't want to be seen on video. I had a number of students who are like, look, I just don't want to do that. That's a way to work around. Flipgrid does now have the ability to turn the camera totally off, so that you also have the ability to record just the audio there as well. Pretty slick situation. All right. So in terms of affective associations, we have two: just using audio, just using your GIF. Also Wakelets. So say there was a scenario in which I decided I wanted to do some different stuff, yo. So I want to do Albert Dürer here. I've got some stuff on Dürer. Great, fine, dandy. I'm going to share that. And you'll notice embed over everything, that embed code. Great. Copy that embed code. And this is the way that I did portfolio work in my classroom. Is just have kids take their work and embed it all over the place. And bada bang, that Flipgrid that Wakelet goes directly to where it needed to go. So we have a GIF, we got some audio, we've got some kid that perhaps got inspired to go search through the internet for other resources about Martin Luther King. Was like, hey, this is cool. I did this research. This is some stuff you guys might be interested in if you like this video. Or as teacher person, you could do the same thing, embed it directly here. And now I don't have to go to Wakelet. I can go and deal with my stuff directly inside of discussions, which makes it super powerful. Webbs, anything to add?
Yeah, so there's also something called community cohesion that's really helpful with building an engaging virtual classroom, and resource sharing is part of that community cohesion piece. So all of this would also tie into community cohesion in addition to affective association. The other thing I was going to suggest that I also suggest in the blog post is creating a discussion that's essentially your random channel. So giving kids, I think a lot of times we want to say, oh, you're off topic, redirect, you're off topic, redirect. Allow kids to go off topic. Allow them to express themselves and give them a space where they can share what they're listening to right now, or what things are most important to them, or what happened with their dog, or just random stories from their life, because that's what's going to build engagement and buy-in in your virtual classroom, is giving them those spaces to share.
But also it lets you have espionage as well, right? Now this person is giving you information. I now can look at that information and say, how can I better create a course that is going to allow people who have these predilections to succeed. Hey, you like dogs, you like this, you like that. Let me make sure that some of that content filters into my modules, because I know these things about you, that you're a TikToker, you do this and these other things. And Webb's mentioned her blog post. If you just go to the intelligenthoodlums.com, building better remote classroom experiences is there. Also in terms of like the random channel, fam, If you use Pomodoros and give kids a break during class, then it's not I'm off topic. I know I'm gonna work 20 minutes and I'm gonna get my next 10 minutes off so I can go in, I can do my random stuff, I can check my social media. I can do checking social media to me is just a thing that is done. And so trying to stop it from happening is pointless. I check my socials as an adult person. I don't know how many times a day. Webs, do you check your socials?
On the reg.
So if we are saying that this is what normal adult people do, why wouldn't people who were born into this technology also have these same habits? And again, if you give them I just gave people 10 minutes during the class period. It was like, oh my goodness, I use my phone for 10 minutes. Yes, you can absolutely use your phone for 10 minutes. Oh, this is amazing. And now they've suddenly become willing participants in any harebrained schemes you have during class because I know I'm going to have my own time. All right, we're a little bit over, but it's all good. Webbs, anything to add for the peoples?
Nope, I think I covered most of it in that blog post. So if you want to know more about ways to include affective association, ways to build out engagement in your classroom based on research, it's in that blog post. And there's both the slightly longer explainer of like where the evidence comes from and what research and all that kind of thing. If you really want to just jump to the bottom and look at the 4 suggestions that I give you, and you want to share more suggestions you might have, you can always look us up on social media. We are on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, our website, I'm Instagram. Am I missing anything?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like we need to get a TikTok to balance out the fact that we have a LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah. That's bad sus. That's pretty sus, man. But it is what it is. So in 2 weeks we'll come back. Streaming, and again, streaming does not. When I start talking to teachers about streaming, it's like, oh my god, I can't do. Yes, you can. You can do it, and you
When
can do
you
it.
first told me that, it never even clicked with me. Like I had also always thought of streaming as like a live thing. But when you pointed out like no, it doesn't have to be live. It can be streamed at any point. It's just that it's going to happen. It's going to be broadcast at a very specific time. Like I knew that, but it took you putting the pieces together for me to like know that.
Streaming also is a way to combat the lack of licensed teachers, right? There's a situation in which multiple classes can tune in at a given time, and then the tier one lesson can be given out by a licensed teacher who's very good, and everyone gets the benefit from it. Because again, when we talk about equity, one of the pieces that is a known but unspoken is that assigning students to classrooms is random, right? The student has no say generally in whose class that person gets put into. You just got to deal with what you're given. Well, that's kind of messed up. Fundamentally, this might not be. This is the best teacher. The best teacher has, or let's say all 4 teachers have different strengths. This is the best math teacher. This is the best science teacher. I should be able to, in 2022, be able to benefit from all 4 of those teachers, whether I'm in their class physically or not. And streaming allows us to do that. Canvas also allows you to do it because you can build one class for all the students, and suddenly everyone can converse with everybody else. There's a lot of things, and people are waiting for technologies to exist that already do. Right? These are already solutions to this problem. We're still on this. Like, what happens if? No, we can solve that problem today, bro. Like, seriously, that is a very easy fix in terms of people being able to say, I want every 4th grader's experience to be similar to every other 4th grader's experience in terms of being challenged to do big projects, to solve problems, to converse with people. This is the thing that we can do pretty quickly, Webs. What say you?
I agree. 100%.
All right, so we will see you all in 2 weeks. I will have the intro music and the outro music all done by then. It was kind of it was an interesting thing. I'm gonna have the comic book thing. I'm gonna flesh out a little bit more because I think it was kind of slick. But I'm gonna flesh out the comic book thing a little bit more, and we should be good. Indeed, 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 indeed. Also, we need a new thing. I don't want to do the horn anymore. I'm gonna come up with a
All
different
right.
thing too, because that's also like this is a new thing. This is a new
Yeah.
idea. We need new stuff. So,
Rebrand.
indeed. So God bless
All
America.
right.
We will see you all in 2 weeks. For those on our newsletter list, you'll get a new newsletter on Friday. That's upcoming Friday. Check out Webbs's Webbs's blog post, because it is very well written, and it is one of those things you might want to show your administrator if you have an administrator or higher level person, in terms of this is why discussion online and remote learning has merit, even when we are on the other side of the pandemic and people aren't as the things is not as contagious rather as the things are now. This is not something to throw away, because we have learned quite a bit about how this can be super effective. Mm-hmm. All right. God bless Tajikistan. Tajikistan. I'll say Tajikistan. How does my Tajiks?
Bye, everybody.
See you later.